Welcome back, everyone. Today we're jumping into a 5th grade topic, identifying triangles by their angles. As always, if you have any questions at all about what you see today, you can put them in the comment box below. If you have questions about your own homework, feel free to visit me on Facebook at Tutor Sempai and tell me all about it there. When you find this video helpful, remember to leave a like, hit the notification bell, smash the subscribe button, and share with a friend. Well, without further ado, let's talk a little bit more about identifying triangles by their angles. So if you remember my last video on identifying triangles, you might remember we pretty much talked about their sides. So we had something like this, which we called an equilateral triangle. Well, when we focus on the sides, let's look on the outside. Now we're going to be focusing on the angles, and the angles are going to be these little corners inside. So in this video, we're not going to be so focused on how the outside looks, but more of the inside. And similar to how we had 3 types of triangles when we identified them by their sides, we're going to have 3 types of triangles when we identify them by their angles. So the first triangle we're going to run into is going to be called an acute triangle. An acute triangle is going to be a triangle in which all 3 angles are less than 90 degrees. So we have an acute triangle here. The second triangle we're going to run into is called an obtuse triangle. An obtuse triangle is going to have an angle that's actually bigger than 90 degrees. So instead of having all angles less than 90, an obtuse triangle is going to have an angle that's greater than 90. Notice that these 2 angles, although they're less than 90, this one is greater than 90. So we call this an obtuse triangle. One angle is greater than 90 degrees. The third triangle you're going to run into, and it's something you probably already heard of before, and you might not have known what they were talking about, is called the right triangle. And a right triangle is going to be categorized by having one angle that is exactly 90 degrees. So although these 2 angles are going to be less than 90, we have one angle that is exactly 90. If you were to measure this angle, it would be exactly 90 degrees. So this is going to be a right triangle. One angle that equals 90 degrees. So now that we talked about acute triangles, obtuse triangles, and right triangles, I want you to see something that's different about the right triangle. When talking about angles and denoting their angles within the triangles, you notice that we have these circular curves for each angle. But the right triangle has this box here. That is on purpose. Right angles, or 90-degree angles, are typically denoted by this box, whereas anything less than or greater than 90 has this curve here. So when you run into a right triangle, it will typically have this box in it, which is another way you can tell if it's a right triangle or not. Now that we have these triangles, how can we remember the difference between them? Acute, obtuse, and right don't necessarily jump out at the page at you, right? So how can we remember which one goes with which triangle? So let's look at the story of Goldilocks and the 3 bears. If you heard of this story before, believe it or not, this story can help us identify our 3 types of triangles. So we have Goldilocks, and she goes into the house of the 3 bears. And one of the things that she sees there is this table with 3 bowls of porridge on it. So Goldilocks, being as hungry as she is, she goes over to the bowls of porridge and she tastes each one. The first one she tastes is a little cold. So that first bowl of porridge, we're going to call our acute angle because it's a little cold. Acute, a little. The second bowl that she tastes is overly hot. She could barely put it in her mouth. So we're going to call that one obtuse. Overly hot, obtuse. Our third bowl is for the baby. And it's just right. The correct temperature. She is hungry and she eats all of it. So our third bowl is going to be our right triangle. So our first bowl was a little cold. So it's acute. Our second bowl was overly hot. So it was obtuse. And our third bowl was just right. So that's our right triangle. So if you've never heard of the story Goldilocks and the 3 bears, I have another tip for you that can potentially help you remember your differences between your triangles. When you write out this triangle, you can actually break up acute to be a cute triangle. So what are some things that people tend to consider cute? Well, small things are pretty cute, right? When you have a small baby or a small puppy or a small Groot. Small things tend to be cute. So when you have a cute triangle, all the angles are small. Small things tend to be a little cute. So a cute triangle, small angles in their triangle. So let's look at the right triangle. And remember, the right triangle is going to be the triangle with one angle that's exactly 90 degrees. And that angle is going to look pretty similar to this, where it stands straight up. You have something flat and it stands straight up. There's no curve, there's no bend, it's just straight up, and we have this little box here. So this will be a right angle, and when we make our triangle, we have a right triangle. Well, how do we remember this? Well, if you're anything like me, when I was younger, my mom had to wake me up constantly. So let's say you are in bed. And your mom comes in the door and says, "Good morning." Well, that might be code word for get up, it's time to go to school. Well, what happens when she says good morning? Well, me, for example, I would jump right up out of bed. I would pop right up. So instead of laying down, I'm no longer flat. I pop right up. No longer flat, laying down flat. I'm up, ready to say good morning to my mom. So right triangles will have an angle that pops right up. Hence, we say it's a right angle. Just like you pop up in your bed when mom says good morning, a right triangle is going to have an angle that pops right up. And finally, we have our obtuse triangle. And obtuse doesn't have anything that just jumps out the page. Once again, unlike acute, which is a cute triangle and you think of small cute things, or right triangle, you think you're popping right up out of bed in the morning, obtuse doesn't really have something like that. But what it does have is the ability to say it is not an acute triangle and it's not a right triangle. So if you remember your acutes and your rights, your obtuse triangles will naturally fall in line. Remember, acutes, small. Rights, pop up. Right? Small things are kind of cute. Right? You're popping straight up out of bed. And if you're not any of these, you fall into an obtuse triangle. So let's look at our problem for today, in which we have these three triangles, and we're trying to identify which one is an acute triangle, which is an obtuse triangle, and which one is our right triangle. And we can go down the Goldilocks route, or we can go down the cute or the pop right up route. But whatever you do, I want you to stick to it, and we're going to use that to figure out which ones are our triangles today. So looking at this first triangle, which one does it seem to resemble more? If we're looking at Goldilocks, is it a little cold? Is it overly hot? Or is it just right? It's just right, right? So we're going to say A is for right. How about the second triangle? Does it have small angles making it a cute triangle? Or is it just right when you pop out of bed, you stand up just right? Or is it none of those, falling into an obtuse triangle? Well, it seems like all the angles are pretty small. So we would say this is a cute triangle because it's small angles. So B would be acute. And our last triangle, so similar to how we said, if it's not a cute angle or you pop right out of bed type of angle, it's going to be an obtuse triangle, right? So our third triangle is going to be obtuse. So you see, our first triangle was right. It was just the right temperature where we popped right out of bed when mom said good morning. Our second one was a little cold, or you can think of it as a bunch of small angles. So it was a cute triangle, so cute, so small. Our third one wasn't a right or an acute, so it had to be an obtuse triangle. So I hope you're able to follow on to these examples. Remember, if you have any questions whatsoever, you can always put them in the comment box below. If you have questions about your own homework I see on this channel, remember to visit me on Facebook at Sempai and tell me all about it there. If you haven't done so already, remember to leave that like, hit the notification bell, smash the subscribe button, and share it with a friend. Well, that's all the time I have for today. I really hope this helped with your homework, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again next week. I'm Courtney, and this is another session of Tutor Me Senpai.